Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar, Maximize Your Giving Tuesday Fundraising and Engagement. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. So all callers will be muted. If you have questions during the presentation, feel free to use the chat box that you see on the left-hand side of your screen. If you lose your internet connection, you can reconnect using the link that was emailed to you and try refreshing your browser. If you have to leave the webinar early or if you want to watch it again, we will be hosting the webinar on our website, TechSoup.org/community/events-webinars, where you can see the slides and watch the webinar again. We'll also be sending out an email with the presentation, the recording, and any relevant links. And if you're on social media, feel free to tweet at us at TechSoup using hashtag TSWebinars. But like I said earlier, we'll be using the chat box that you see on the left-hand side. So just a little bit about TechSoup before we get started. We are in 236 countries and territories, and we serve over 1 million nonprofits. We partner with several technology companies like Adobe, Amazon Web Services, Intuit, Microsoft, Symantec, and a whole other list of companies that you see here to make our mission possible. If you're interested in learning more about what technologies are available to you, feel free to visit the URL that you see here to understand what product donations are available to you. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce today's speaker. So my name is Seema Tucker, and I'm the Senior Manager here at TechSoup. And then we have Michael Stein, who is the Senior Director of Partnerships at Every Action. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Michael before we get started. So he's been a writer and digital strategist to progressive social causes since the birth of the Internet. He is the author of 3 books and numerous articles chronicling the rise of digital engagement, mobile and online fundraising. He is currently the Senior Director of Partnerships at Every Action, a cloud-based online platform that offers tools for email messaging, fundraising, donor management, advocacy, and organizing on a single unified CRM. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Michael.
That's great. Thank you so much, Seema. And it's a pleasure to be able to join you today. And hello, everyone. This is Michael Stein. I'm coming to you from the San Francisco Bay Area in Northern California. I hope you are all doing well and that you've survived Halloween in your local communities. Always a fun activity in the neighborhood where I live. So today, I'm just having a hard time advancing that slide. There we go. So today we are going to talk about Giving Tuesday, which, as many of you know, is only 26 days away. It was created in New York City by 2 nonprofits, and it's been growing ever since. This is Giving Tuesday's 7th year, and I like to think that this annual giving tradition is still evolving, which is a theme that I'll come back to a lot. I've worked with dozens of organizations over the years on Giving Tuesday campaigns, and I think if there's one constant from my experience, it's that organizations are sort of changing their approach to Giving Tuesday year to year. They're trying different things. They're testing different messaging strategies. So we'll talk about that during our time together today. And okay, let's jump right in. So I've divided our discussion today into a couple different themes. So we'll start with some of the big picture strategy issues related to Giving Tuesday, and then we'll drill down and talk about messaging with email, preparing your website, harnessing your social networks, and then we'll close by discussing the importance of measurement, and we'll also have time for Q&A. And as Seema mentioned, feel free to ask questions into the ReadyTalk chat area, and we'll try to get to those at the end of our time. So great, let's start by discussing your Giving Tuesday strategy. And I think this question, certainly the most frequent issue that comes up each year for nonprofits is really how best to align your Giving Tuesday campaign with your regular year-end fundraising campaign. I mean, this is sometimes referred to as kind of the cannibalization issue. In other words, if you're fundraising for GivingTuesday, is it going to harm, my year-end fundraising efforts? I mean, after all, these two activities just seem so close together. And so I think to address this point, I just wanted to say that I've seen kind of organizations approach this in kind of one of two ways. The first way is to embrace the fact that GivingTuesday is basically the start of your whole year-end digital fundraising season and just run with that. After all, many organizations do start their year-end direct mail campaigns in mid-November. So this kind of a mashup of GivingTuesday and year-end, I think works really well for some organizations. Although frankly, although it requires you, to create kind of this seamless and fairly long sort of messaging and fundraising campaign arc that's going to run, literally from, late November to the end of December. So that can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge, and I'll look at it and show you an example in a little bit. I mean, the second way is to consider GivingTuesday as its own kind of independent annual seasonal campaign and just to run with that. I think this has certainly probably become the most popular approach that I've seen, and I do usually recommend this approach when people ask me. But I think your experiences year over year may vary with this, and so I am always open to learning what's working for people. So invite you to share that. Let's see, another useful approach when considering your GivingTuesday campaign sort of this year is for you to review what worked for you last year. So assuming you did a campaign last year and also assuming you documented all your activities and captured all your metrics, you should be able to assess what elements last year are going to help you think through this year. So what worked last year? You're going to want to definitely look at messaging that you used that might have worked, looked at the different audiences and how they might have responded to any of your fundraising appeals. Of course, looking at the actual money that you raised, assessing your email open rates, click-through rates, links that were clicked. If you did any testing last year, this might help inform your work this year. Looking at what you did on social media and what people responded to. And then also if you have any just anecdotal or community response, if people shared that back with you, just really important to look back to last year and to be able to think through how that helps you think about what you're going to do this year. Great. So you may remember me saying earlier that GivingTuesday is kind of an evolving annual tradition, and this is definitely where I encourage nonprofits to think expansively about their goals. I mean, it may be too limiting to think of GivingTuesday as purely kind of a fundraising related campaign. I mean, obviously it's called Giving Tuesday, but obviously people don't just give money to nonprofits. They're obviously giving their time as a volunteer. They're giving their passion to a local community project. So I recommend you to keep your mind open about what works for you. And there's also kind of a fifth kind of hidden item here, which is that you may choose to use GivingTuesday as more of a time where you can do sort of focused cultivation and stewardship of your donors and supporters as you prepare for your year-end fundraising campaign. In other words, one other way to use GivingTuesday is to sort of tone back the fundraising completely and then dial up more of the engagement and connections. So again, just for the things on this slide, I mean, the goals that people mostly focus on, one would be raising money, two, engaging supporters through some way, getting involved in local events, activities, activism, advocacy. People use GivingTuesday to recruit volunteers to do certain projects, and they also use it to grow their email list or just to grow their reach. So these are the things that we see kind of the most often. Let's see. Another campaign strategy issue is for you to think a little bit about how you're going to activate your audiences for GivingTuesday. I mean, I think nonprofits sort of often focus their efforts on what they perceive as their kind of most valuable constituents, active donors, lapsed donors, volunteers, and activists. And so it's helpful to think about how you want to engage with those particular folks for Giving Tuesday, and I think that's really like your starting place for how you want to message those folks. And then you probably have an even larger group of folks that I'll refer to as kind of the non-donors, social media followers. Maybe they're just people on your email subscriber list. You might not know who a lot of those folks are, but they're there. They're probably a great group of individuals, although they may be a little less committed to your cause if they haven't volunteered yet or done activism or advocacy work with you or haven't given. And so again, think about what you can ask them to do that's going to be easy, quick, and fun, that's going to engage them to what you're going to do. And of course, each of you on the webinar may have other audience groups, so simply kind of categorize your constituents in other ways based on geography or issue interests or local engagement. And so again, think about how you might want to engage with each of these groups of people. Maybe you want to break them into 2 or 3 different groups and message them a little differently. But it's really about thinking about how to activate these audiences for Giving Tuesday. Okay, let's take a look at a calendar for November. Only a few weeks away. So these last 2 weeks of November are pretty packed, right? We've got Thanksgiving, we've got Black Friday, we've got Cyber Monday, we've got some weekends in there, especially that weekend, immediately before. A lot of families, with kids have time off from school, so definitely a busy time. So I would say starting your Giving Tuesday messaging up to a week ahead of time is usually a pretty common approach. With email messaging and also social media, and obviously that weekend immediately before Giving Tuesday is also a good time. I think there's a little bit of a myth that, we shouldn't be emailing people on the weekend, and that is true. Some people use work emails and don't see those messages, but there's tons of people who, as you know, think of your own self, are very active on email over the weekend. So I think that's just an important time to be in touch with folks. And then, of course, don't hesitate to continue your messaging, beyond the Giving Tuesday. That's on a Tuesday, but you've got that whole week when people, they may be back to school or back to work. So there's lots of time to do that. Giving Tuesday may be, just one day, but really it's up to you, to turn it into something, more substantive. Great. Let's see here. And so really, the challenge is to create out of Giving Tuesday something, truly unique to your organization. So, think about what original content you can create with photos or videos. Really what story do you want to tell, and are you able to tell to get people fired up? And then also, another key thing is to create a goal out of Giving Tuesday. It could be a fundraising goal, or it could be a goal related to a campaign that you're promoting. So the goal, I think, as I mentioned earlier on, can vary, but always connecting clearly to your mission and something which is central to your organization. I think this is a good time for me to promote the GivingTuesday.org website, which has some great resources. There are toolkits, there are case studies from past years, and there's also this great idea library. You can probably see the screenshot on the right, and you can browse the content on the website in different ways, and definitely extremely useful. So my favorites are actually these write-ups of different campaigns. I just threw a couple of quick screenshots just to give you an idea of these. I completely guarantee that you'll be inspired after spending time in this online resource library. And I find myself in here when I'm trying to get creative or just looking for examples that are going to help me when I'm having a conversation with someone about Giving Tuesday. Great. Let me jump into 3 quick case studies of some of my own projects that I've been associated with. these are always grounding just because they're real campaigns that I've been involved with. This is one from Mercy for Animals, which is involved in investigating animal cruelty. And they did this terrific Giving Tuesday campaign where they were raising money to sort of what they call fund one full investigation, which I think was a nice sort of defined project. And they also had a triple challenge match. And so you can see just from this screenshot, Jeff is putting it out there: stop animal suffering, your gift today will go 3 times as far, etc. I mean, these are, challenging issues, and it's always interesting when they can, create a very distinct campaign for Giving Tuesday that will mobilize and motivate their donors and supporters to give. So I really liked this one as an example. Another example here that I want to show, this one is from the Middle East Children's Alliance, which is based in Berkeley, California, and they do projects in the West Bank and in Gaza and in a few other locations around the Middle East. And their Giving Tuesday campaign was focused around raising $15,000 to provide what they call safe, clean water to 2,500 kids in Gaza. And I just thought they did just a really good job defining a very distinct campaign and explaining what the money was for and how much they needed. They actually had a really nice video which they sent out through their at their campaign. In fact, I wasn't able to embed the video today, but I did put the link to it if anyone's interested in taking a look at it. It was an 8-minute video, which I thought was a little long, certainly, but definitely very engaging, and the campaign was successful. So I think they did something right on that campaign. And then the third example that I wanted to show you real quickly was from Berkeley Humane, which does dog and cat adoptions and so on. And they had this great campaign a couple of years ago where they were raising money at Giving Tuesday to get 5,000 meals to their dogs and cats. And I just thought the visual and the ask was really good. Basically, the ask was, give $50. It was very straightforward. They didn't even bother too much with what giving levels you had. It was just like they were just going to ask everyone on their file for $50. And if people got to the donation page and they gave more, that would be great. They had a nice visual. They alternated between dogs and cats. They've got this nice little progress thermometer here. Oh, I should get my little pen going. Okay, here we go. Sorry, gotta get my pen. All right, here we go. Here's our progress thermometer, which I thought was really clever. And I just thought this was a nice direct approach for their Giving Tuesday campaign. Okay, great. Let's see. I think the final topic that I wanted to touch on is just the issue of fundraising. I think many organizations have success at Giving Tuesday when they focus on new donors and small gifts. So I wanted to spend a minute talking about this. I mean, I think of your goal as perhaps acquiring new donors and getting them to make their first gift. So think a little bit about how this might work for you. I mean, definitely looking back at what you did last year can help inform you. But typically, what I've seen with my clients and organizations that I've worked with is that giving levels for Giving Tuesday tend to be a lot lower than at other times of the year. And we do see a much higher number of new donors that come in. And we see folks making lots of smaller gifts and also making smaller monthly gifts. So I think all of those, are good sort of strategy indicators, and hopefully they give you some thoughts on testing or trying out that strategy for your community. Especially if you're using any kind of crowdfunding platform or campaign, which is definitely going to be attracting folks making smaller gifts. And this, you might consider, making sure that your donation page gift strings start really low. And if you are having a challenge match, that really also reinforces it. If someone's giving a gift of $10, it's going to get doubled to 20, etc. So really thinking that having a focus on new donors and small gifts I find is a really helpful way to think about fundraising strategy for GivingTuesday. And of course, ultimately, your challenge is then to convert those donors into making second gifts that could be a little bit higher, etc. So you'll have that challenge going forward. Great. Let's move on to part 2 and talk about email messaging. As I'm looking at my time here, and let's see here. A little trouble with my laptop, but I think I'm back on here. Great. So let's bring our November calendar back. Definitely for messaging with email, I think the challenge is really to figure out the best timing for your emails within the context of GivingTuesday. And I think this may sound simple, but I also know that organizations, have lots of other things that are going on at that time. They've got events, they have galas, they have Thanksgiving-themed activities. And if you did a GivingTuesday campaign last year, it's super important, I think, to review the performance of your emails last year. I mean, basically, what can you learn about how those emails performed? If you were fundraising, how did the schedule of your emails impact your giving? And so oftentimes, you may want to make some changes to how you did things last year. And then as you think about your email campaign, you'll want to think a little bit about your messaging and your template design. Are you going to want to create a couple of different versions of your email to send to your different audiences? Many folks like to create a template design that's kind of unique around the time of GivingTuesday. In fact, GivingTuesday offers you a couple of design elements that you're welcome to use and to adapt to your brand. And then just think about how you may be able to take your messaging and break it up into your different audience segments. You may want to have one version of the GivingTuesday message for your donors. You may want to have a different version for your non-donors, but really thinking about how to build your strategy, with your emails. Let me take a minute and also take a look at a quick campaign I was involved with last year. I think there's some good sort of instructive pieces in here that are hopefully useful for you and inspiring. So the SETI Institute, which is the organization here, is a science-based organization that studies the origin of life in the universe. And this is their GivingTuesday campaign from last year. They sent 3 email messages, November 22nd, 26th, and 28th. And their GivingTuesday campaign was in fact the start of their whole year-end campaign. So the two were connected. Remember, this was one of the 2 approaches that we discussed at the very beginning of the webinar. And so they chose their president and CEO to start the messaging on November 22nd, and then they switched over to Jill Tarter, who is a celebrated scientist in their community and really well known. She's the founder of the organization. And they were offering a copy of her new book, Making Contact, for gifts of $150 and up. They had this nice progress thermometer here to help the donors visualize where they were in the campaign and build some momentum. They had a $75,000 fundraising goal, and they had a match. And so you can see, their buttons, they all say match my gift instead of just donate now. So this was a really effective campaign for them, and I'm super excited to see what they come up with this year. They always do stuff that's really, really creative. And the other element of this is just take a look at how they also constructed an email template. They have their logo at the top, they've got this image, then they've got the thermometer, and then they have usually like a call out call-out area over here, and each message is also signed, by the signer at the bottom. So this template allows them to sort of create continuity from message to message, and hopefully allows the donor to be excited as they receive the message. And even if someone has made a gift, it can be exciting to continue to get the messages just to see how that progress bar continues. So hopefully this campaign gives you some inspiration. And because we were talking about the Middle East Children's Alliance before, just want to show you what they did. They did a message on Sunday the 26th and the 28th, so they did a 2-message series, and they basically just repeated the email twice. So they have it embedded in here. They were raising, as I mentioned earlier, $15,000 to buy these water desalination and purification units. And so they had this video that was embedded, and when people clicked on the video, it either took them to their website where the video played, or it would play in their browser if they were using like a web mail service. So this was a nice campaign that I thought was very effective and very visual. And as you can see just from these screenshots, pretty simple template design here, so not particularly complicated. Great. Good. So just to close out this section on email, and just to summarize, I just think the key strategies that I just want to highlight here, just the importance of figuring out who's going to be sending the email, who's your spokesperson, and thinking a little bit about that. Figuring out what's your ask. Are you saying double your gift to help us do X or Y? Are you asking for a straight $50 donation? Are you asking at different giving levels? Like, figure out how you're going to frame your ask. And again, think about the giving level that you may want to inject in there. If you have a challenge match, which is a very popular thing at GivingTuesday, let's get that injected right from the beginning and be really, really visual and visible in the campaign, since that really moves the needle a lot. And if you have any kind of a gift, you might want to put that up front as well, since obviously people love to have gifts. Think about the visuals that you may be able to use, photos, videos, et cetera, et cetera. And then just think about your timing, your deadlines, momentum, and how you're going to be able to build that across the messaging arc of your campaign. Great. Let us move on to section 3, where we're going to talk about preparing your website for GivingTuesday. So these are the kind of the top ideas that I wanted to share with you. One, just so important to have your website sort of ready to roll for GivingTuesday. So as you approach the date, you have your home page maybe at the top, whether you have a carousel or just static content, just making sure that you have your campaign featured in some manner. I just wanted to use the example of the Middle East Children's Alliance. They basically created a big block at the top of their page for their water project, and then they could have said donate to the campaign, but they decided to go with learn more. And then as people click on that button, then it takes them into the site where they can find out a lot more about the campaign. You can just so important to use as much of a clear headline and description of the project, and the imagery that you have should be consistent with the imagery that you're using on social media and also on email. And then if you have any other website content that you want to offer, just make sure that it's available, and again that it syncs and is consistent with the other content that you're using throughout the campaign. The second big thing for preparing your website is definitely to think about using light boxes. So light boxes are these pop-up graphics that come right in front of you on the browser. And even though I wouldn't normally recommend using these all year round because they do create some problems with Google search engine optimization, I think it's okay to use these in very confined time periods like the GivingTuesday. And so I think having for GivingTuesday, I think it's important to have a light box that can promote your campaign. If you have a match or anything else, this screenshot is actually from a year-end campaign, but just wanted to use it as an example. So having this available, popping up on the home page, popping up on your top 20 pages on your site, you can talk to your webmaster, webmistress to make sure this is set up correctly, and just make sure it only shows to your new visitors. Lightbox has definitely shown to be a very effective strategy to get your GivingTuesday campaign in front of folks. Here's another Lightbox example. This one's from Semper Virens Fund, which protects old growth forests in Northern California. I really liked the way that they promoted a match. They talk about the foundation that's giving the match. And then again, the messaging is nice, match my gift, which then takes you on to a donation page. Speaking of donation pages, super important also to have donation pages that are ready, and not just your generic page that you normally have on your site, but to have a donation page that's specifically aligned with your messaging strategy for GivingTuesday. This one happens to be from No Kid Hungry. This was from a few years ago, but I really liked it. And it has, the GivingTuesday brand. It has their thermometer, which is maybe just a little graphic that you're updating. They explain, what the campaign's for. I mean, I would ideally have liked a slightly stronger call to action than double your impact today with Citi. But again, maybe they were testing the language to see how it worked. But I just love the use of the image of the kid and so on. I just think this was a nice strong page. Here's another example from Defenders of Wildlife. Again, important to have these pages aligned with the rest of the messaging that you're using for GivingTuesday. What I like about this particular page is that they actually show the match. This is a 3-for-1 match, and they actually show you if you make a gift of $30, it's going to become, it's going to get tripled and go to $120 and so on and so forth. So I like the fact that they did the math for people right here on the donation page. So just so important to do that. Great. And then this was another example from the National Museum of African American History and Culture from last year. They had literally just opened, I think, at the time GivingTuesday came around, but they did just a really nice campaign. I remember seeing it all over the place. And so they are giving away a hat for a gift of $100 or more, which is definitely a pretty high bar for a gift, and certainly doesn't fit some of my other comments about this is a good time to raise small gifts. But this was probably something that they were testing. The museum had just opened. Maybe it fit in with their goal to do brand building. People excited to showcase their support of the museum. So I thought this was really nice. Again, something that you could be testing one year. Maybe you have something that you want a gift that you want to give away. Figure out the level that's an appropriate gift amount, and I think that's something that's great to test. Great. Let's move on and talk about social networks. I saw a couple of questions actually that were floating in there about Facebook and that kind of stuff. So we're going to talk about that right now. So the key strategy here with social networks is really to think about your social networks just as an important part of your multi-channel outreach for GivingTuesday. I mean, I am sure that many of you are already pretty experienced at using social networks to build your nonprofit brand, connect with your supporters. I mean, I'm always amazed what nonprofits are doing, nonprofits of all sizes, just getting really creative, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, et cetera. There are just so many networks out there. And basically, I think your GivingTuesday campaign is more likely to succeed if you can tie those together, and if you can coordinate the content that you're developing for email with the messaging you're doing on email, and make sure that that's also used on social media, so you have consistency there. And basically, think of ways that you can engage with your audiences and their friends. I mean, I've seen everything from hashtag campaigns to people taking selfies and posting their support for different organizations. Also, thanking your donors publicly with their permission on social media can be a really fun way to build and create visibility for your GivingTuesday campaign. So really, it's really about creating momentum, and social media platforms can definitely help with that. So I mean, this is definitely the time of the year when I see people using social networks really the most effectively. It's really exciting to see that. So let me also talk for a couple minutes about Facebook and just take a specific look at it because it's the social network most used by nonprofits. And here's a few things that I've seen nonprofits do on Facebook around GivingTuesday that are really effective. I mean, first of all, it is super important to, because when you post your content on Facebook, it only organically reaches under about 10% of your fans. This is a great time to dedicate a little bit of your budget money to boost your content so that you can increase your reach. It doesn't take a lot. It's hard for me to estimate on the phone what it would take, but usually if you log into Facebook and go into the section on content boosting, it will give you a really quick cost estimate. Hey, if you put $20 a day, you'd be able to reach 100% or 80% of your fans. So this is a good time, obviously, where you want to increase your reach. So this is a good time to be boosting your content on Facebook. A second strategy that is very effective around GivingTuesday is Facebook Live. So this is basically creating a live event, using a video on your phone. You can publicize it ahead of time and so on and so forth. And again, if you schedule a Facebook Live event, maybe with one of your staff members or someone who's involved in one of the campaigns that you're promoting at GivingTuesday, just a great way to draw additional attention to yourself. Also, Facebook has some really nice built-in publicity tools. So as you schedule your upcoming Facebook Live, Facebook is kind of publicizing it and pushing it out, into your fan base. So that's really something important to consider. Another tool on Facebook that's grown a lot in the last couple of years is basically their fundraising tools, which is a peer-to-peer kind of crowdfunding tool. So you, as an individual, so I'm Michael Stein, and I hear that my favorite organization, the Middle East Children's Alliance, is doing some fundraising. I want to fundraise for them. I'm going to create a fundraising campaign to raise $500 from my friends. And Facebook makes it really easy now to be able to do that. And actually, the organization can also set up some of these fundraising tools with some templated items, and they've really made it super easy to do these. So there was Facebook fundraising is only about 2 years old on Facebook. Last year, there was definitely a big growth in usage, and I would expect a large growth this year as well. So that is a super exciting prospect. Definitely in the more advanced category of using Facebook is that you can take your email subscriber list and you can upload the list into Facebook and do what they call a custom campaign, where you could then deliver ads to those individuals. So it's this really creative multi-channel approach to reaching out to your email subscribers on Facebook. It is, one could construe, a little bit invasive to get in front of people without their explicit permission, but that's sort of how this system works. And I definitely encourage folks to consider doing that. Obviously, you have to pay Facebook's advertising costs to be able to use that, but something definitely worth trying, and also measuring to see if it makes an impact. And of course, speaking of Facebook advertising, you of course have the entire Facebook advertising platform. If you do want to try to increase your reach, the most common tools in there are these so-called lookalike audience tools. So you can basically run ads publicizing your GivingTuesday campaign, ask Facebook to reach out to lookalike audiences, and then it will scale your reach based on your budget, how much you want to spend. We've also seen a pretty dramatic increase in the use of the ad platform and Facebook to be able to do that. So just wanted to share a few of those items with you. And then, I think and just to close out this section, another key to success really on social networks is really also to recruit, social media ambassadors who are going to help you spread the word. These are volunteers who are really going to help. And again, as I mentioned before with the Facebook examples, the best way that ambassadors can help you is if they set up their own fundraising goals to raise money for you using a crowdfunding fundraising or funding tool. Again, you can use Facebook fundraising, but there are also a slew of other platforms out there, and I definitely will encourage you to go take a dive into the TechSoup product catalog because there are several options in there. And again, the whole point of the social network effect is to get your fans and followers to help spread the word about your GivingTuesday campaign. It's exciting to see social networks really take off during GivingTuesday and really make an impact. And it was really the intention of the creators of GivingTuesday to be able to do that. And it's fun to watch it happen in real time. Great. Okay, let's go to our fifth and final topic, which is the importance of measuring everything that you're doing. And as you can see, just from this list here, what I would encourage you is to have as much discipline as you can to basically track everything that you're doing. I mean, not only will this discipline, help you evaluate how this year's GivingTuesday campaign went for you, but you'll definitely appreciate the effort next year when it comes time to do it all over again. So be able to looking back. So the kind of things that you're looking to measure, obviously you want to measure your fundraising, so the revenue that you had, the different donors that made the gifts, average gifts, so everything you can about the donor community. If you've promoted any monthly giving or had folks make gifts that are monthly as opposed to one time, that would be something also to pay specific attention to. Really the most important part of it is being able to determine your performance by audience segment. In other words, who in your constituent community responded the most positively to your GivingTuesday campaign. And I think that's where there's really a lot of value in measuring as carefully as you can. Again, depending on which kind of a platform, a digital platform that you're on, you'll have to figure out how best to extract some of these analytics. Again, the TechSoup product catalog will give you also ideas for some platforms, and then some of you already have platforms. But just so important to be able to extract this material and putting it together. And the other things that you'll definitely want to measure is how much traffic came to your donation pages. Where did that traffic come from? Some of it probably came organically from your website. Some of it came from people clicking through on your email. And then, of course, measuring the conversion rate up to those donation pages. The average conversion rate is really only 25% of people make donations once they get to a page. So just trying to measure that and see, what you can learn to improve some of that. And then, of course, measuring everything you can on social media. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of them have analytics capabilities that are available to you as part of using them. They all actually come free at the basic level, so definitely taking advantage of those, spending some time learning how to extract things like a reach. If you're doing ads on any of those platforms, the ad modules have a lot of detailed information about how your ads have performed. And then, of course, just connecting the dots really between if you're doing a lot of social media, how much of that drove traffic to your donation pages or to your actions that you were promoting, so that you can try to sort of measure the return on investment for that effort, even if you didn't spend a lot of money on social media, just trying to determine what worked and what were some of your highlights. And of course, it's super important to gather and keep year over year all of your content, keep track of copies of your emails and screenshots of different things that you've gathered. Again, 12 months down the road, you'll be very thankful to be able to reflect back on this. Okay, great. I am going to close with just 7 tips, and then we can jump into Q&A. So here's the 7 tips, which are with the material that we've covered. So one, obviously the importance of integrating your messaging channels across your email, across your website, and across social media. Number two, creating campaigns so you can build the maximum momentum with folks so that people get excited. You do that through your through your emails and through your messaging on all these different channels. Number three, emailing more. We often say, gosh, there's already so much email, but I really don't think there's I actually don't think there is enough at these particular times, just because it's just so hard to get into people's inboxes. Number four, recruiting social ambassadors always pays off, just because these folks, A, help you spread the word, and then they also help you fundraise with peer-to-peer fundraising tools. Number five, just any kind of increase in your social media activity is going to benefit you at GivingTuesday. So if you normally do this much, you need to uptick it. You need to dial it up. That's how you're going to get more in front of people. Number six, promote smaller giving levels, since that tends to open the door for people at GivingTuesday. So monthly giving, which are lower giving levels, and smaller gifts. And then number seven, improving donation pages, because that automatically just increases your giving if you can improve those pages, just because you can convert more people there. I am going to leave you with one last thing, and then I will turn the podium back to Seema. I just wanted to mention a free guide which I've written on successful year-end fundraising, and I invite you to download it at the URL listed on the slide, and also Seema will send you the link via email too. So I invite you to check that out. And I think at that point I will pause right there and, back one, and invite Seema to take over from here with the question and answers.
All right, thank you, Michael. That was very, very informative. So if you guys have questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box right now to chat them in, and I can pass them along to Michael. So Michael, we did get a few questions, and you might have already gone over this, but so the first question we got was, is Facebook a good platform for a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign? And then they said, in the past we've had issues finding names of donors who gave on Facebook, but at least it's free. So I know you kind of already went over this a little bit, but do you want to maybe address that specific question?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Genesee. The direct answer to your question is yes. I think it is a great platform. It's seen a lot of growth, and so I think they make the tools quite easy to use. I mean, the tools have also evolved over time on the basis of use. I agree with you that one of the big challenges with Facebook fundraising is that it can be difficult to extract the donor info. It takes a little bit of perseverance to figure it out. But obviously if someone makes a credit card donation using the platform, I mean that data is definitely in there. It's really a question of kind of drilling down through the back-end management system to try to track it down. Again, the platform is just great, just for so many reasons, just because individuals can, involve their own friends, and you can bring advertising to bear to increase its reach and do boosting. So I definitely recommend it. There are obviously plenty of other peer-to-peer platforms that are out there that are available for you, but certainly I think the Facebook fundraising one is great. I mean, I certainly encourage organizations to give it a try at least once, just to see sort of like, how it worked for you during the GivingTuesday framework. You may find that it just didn't, move the bar for you. But again, if you bring some social media ambassadors to help you, and volunteers, typically that can help you grow your reach and hopefully help you raise more money.
All right, so we got another question that just came in. If this is our first GivingTuesday campaign, do you have any suggestions for starting without any prior data with which to compare?
That's a great one. Yes, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Yes. Well, if you don't have anything to compare, you could potentially talk to other organizations that are like you. I'm sure you work with plenty of other nonprofits in your region that are perhaps the same size. I mean, it's really typically a question of sort of scale and reach and capacity. So, it can be helpful to reach out to another organization that has about the same size list as you do, the same amount of staff, resources dedicated to fundraising or digital work, and that can help you do a little bit of benchmarking. I sometimes consult the 2018 the M&R benchmarks study, which has just some interesting benchmarking in it, and that talks about sort of different sort of levels of investment in social media and GivingTuesday that can sometimes be useful. But other than that, you're going to have to sort of do some benchmarking with other organizations that are like yours to figure out where to go. And everyone has to start somewhere. Hopefully, you'll have a great first year, and it'll give you some knowledge to take into the following year.
All right. So we have another question. So for organizations providing indirect services like grant making, what type of messaging would you suggest that lines up with the $50 feeds this many people for a month type of message? So if the organization doesn't have something that clear, how would you recommend the messaging?
Yeah, that's certainly that sounds like a great challenge. I mean, I think that GivingTuesday is sort of well positioned when you can simplify sort of the ask, simplify what campaign you're doing. So the challenge is back to you to sort of figure out how to how maybe to profile one or more campaigns. Maybe you're supporting through your grant making a project, or you have a capacity building internal project that you want to support, or there's just something local in the community and you're partnering with another organization to raise money for something. I mean, I think the issue of what to fundraise for is definitely something that has been probably the biggest challenge of GivingTuesday year to year. And I think that's why, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I see organizations often changing their strategy each year to figure out, like, gee, that didn't work that well last year. Let's try this different approach this year. The other thing that I see people doing also is trying out, 2 or 3 different strategies in the same year to see, which one is the most effective. And that allows you to put 2 different asks kind of side by side. You could literally send, the message to half of your email file and the other message to the other half, or do some of it on social media and again to another group on social media. I mean, people do tons of testing around GivingTuesday because they're still learning. I mean, I think that's always the challenge with an annual seasonal campaign, is that each year you're trying to make refinements to it because it's going to come back again next year. So always just going into it in a way that hopefully you can learn from it and help you improve the following year.
Okay. So in terms of, we got another question. Are there strategies between payment platform pages, for example, taking advantage of Facebook/PayPal's match for GivingTuesday, to having your own customized donation page?
Yeah, that's a really great one. Thank you for bringing that one up. So, Facebook has a number of different offers that they make available through some corporate partnerships to basically, make credit card donation fees go away and kind of things like that. I mean, I think that I certainly encourage people to take advantage of those. I think Facebook tried that last year, sort of pretty broadly, and it definitely got a lot of success. I mean, I would say presumably you're fundraising through different channels. You've got your direct email channel of people that you're reaching, but then you're also on Facebook and doing visibility over there. I think, yes, take advantage of that free offer with Facebook. Obviously, you have a little bit less kind of control over the messaging just because you're always in that Facebook user interface. And as mentioned by one of our previous questioners, it's a little bit more difficult to extract the donor information from Facebook, so there's definitely some downsides. You also don't often acquire the email address of the donor on Facebook, depending on what they filled out. But still, the advantage of going with Facebook is that it's a little bit of a cheaper option for you. But I always recommend that people have their own donation page and donation processing capacity that's separate from a social network, just because there are going to be plenty of instances and where you're just going to want to do something where you have like full control over the look and feel of a page, options on the page. So even though I'm certainly very enthusiastic about using the Facebook platform when they have those kinds of offers, I just also think it's super important to have your own donation pages as well. So I again always encourage people to have both, so they have maximum flexibility at different times of the year for what they need.
All right, so I think we have time for one more question. So in terms of recruiting social media ambassadors, do you have any suggestions on how to go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's such a timely question, just because my kids are in high school, and they're all looking for summer jobs, to pad their resumes as they prepare to go to college. And I continue to believe that one of the best places to recruit social media ambassadors is from your local high school. As you know, these folks are talented social media inhabitants that have so much to teach us, and they're also super eager to find either internships or just basic paying jobs. Again, not to earn a living because they're in school, but really to put something on their resume. And I hope that doesn't sound too simplistic, but believe it or not, that is often one of the best sources of social media ambassadors. So wanted to pass that one along to you.
All right, so I think we are getting close to time. Michael, did you want to share your information, and then I can wrap up?
Oh, well, just what's on the slide here, and just inviting people to connect with me. If you have a question that we didn't get to, or you think of something else, I actually invite you to email me at my mstein@everyaction.com email address. And you can also follow me or follow the Every Action Company on Twitter. And yeah, thank you very much for having me today. It's been a pleasure to be able to join you.
Perfect. So just before we close the webinar, if you guys don't mind, there's a post-event survey, so any feedback that you have for us or for Michael, your feedback really helps us, and it helps us dictate future content, so if you could spend a couple minutes filling that out, that would be great. We're on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, so feel free to give us a follow, and we also have a blog where we post a lot of tips and tricks and things like that, and Michael is often a guest blogger for us, so feel free to visit our blog for more tips and tricks. And then we have upcoming webinars in November if you're interested, November and December. If you're interested in registering for those, you can see the URL at the bottom, so feel free to join us. Those are all free. And lastly, thank you again to Michael. Thank you to the attendees for joining us today, and to our webinar sponsor, ReadyTalk. We hope to see you in the next webinar.